The glass of Chardonnay does not shatter. It merely tilts, slipping from long, manicured fingers, spilling amber tears across the imported Turkish wool rug before it hits with a heavy, deadened thud. Elena doesn't scream. She only catches her breath, her eyes widening in the dim, amber glow of the study, as Julian Vance lowers the fountain pen he has been holding for the last 20 minutes. Julian does not look at the wine. He looks past the spilled puddle, straight through the open mahogany doorway into the dimly lit hallway, where the reflection in the polished antique mirror captures a shadow moving too closely to another. "You were saying, Julian?" Elena's voice is silk-stretched over razor wire. She recovers instantly, a practiced, luminous smile smoothing the panic from her high cheekbones. She steps over the wet wool, her silk heels clicking against the hardwood with terrifying precision, sliding closer to the desk. "About the foundation transfer. It's simply tedious paperwork. Let me sign it for you." Julian remains entirely still. His skin is the color of aged parchment, mapped with the rivers of 82 years, but his eyes, pale slate behind wire-rimmed glasses, are crystal clear. "The paperwork can wait, Elena," Julian says. His voice is a low, dry rasp, stripped of its former boardroom thunder, but it carries a quiet, unyielding weight. He stands up slowly, leaning his weight onto a polished cherrywood cane, and turns his back to her. Through the towering floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, the sprawling, neon-bleeding skyline of downtown Chicago stretches out like a grid of indifferent stars. But Julian is not looking at the city. He is looking at the heavy walnut door of the guest suite down the hall, where a sliver of light escapes, and where a silver and onyx cufflink, identical to the one currently missing from Gregory's sleeve, rests on the console table just outside. At 5 a.m., the Vance estate does not belong to elegance. It belongs to Clara. The penthouse is silent, save for the rhythmic, low-frequency hum of the climate control system and the distant, muted pulse of the city below. In the vast, marble-clad kitchen, the glow of the under-cabinet lighting catches the steam rising from a small copper pot. Clara moves with quiet economy. Her hair is bound in a neat, salt and pepper braid, tucked beneath a plain linen apron. She measures the loose-leaf Earl Grey with exact precision, 2 teaspoons, no more, and grind a single cardamom pod to crush into the brewing water. It is a recipe she learned from her mother in a modest apartment 3 suburbs away. But here, in this sterile cathedral of wealth, it is an act of small, defiant preservation. She knows the rhythms of this house better than the floorboards know themselves. She knows that the 3rd step from the bottom of the grand staircase creaks if you step near the mahogany wainscoting. She knows that Elena prefers her crystal water pitcher filled precisely 2 inches below the rim with room-temperature Fiji water, and that Julian, the man who built an empire of logistics and steel, takes his tea without sugar, but always watches the steam rise for a long moment before his first sip. Clara likes Julian, not because he is a billionaire or because his name is stamped on hospital wings and university libraries, but because he sees her. When he passes her in the corridor, he doesn't look through her the way Elena does, treating her like an animate piece of furniture. Julian nods. Sometimes, on raw autumn mornings, he asks if her arthritis is acting up from the draft near the service elevators. "You're early, Clara," a dry voice says from the doorway. Clara turns, her heart executing its familiar, soft stutter. Julian stands there in a charcoal cashmere robe that hangs loosely on his thinning frame. He looks tired, the gray shadows under his eyes deepened by another sleepless night. "Good morning, Mr. Vance," Clara says, her voice low and soothing, like falling water. "The tea will be ready in a moment. I added a touch of cardamom. It helps with the chest tightness." Julian offers a faint, tired smile, lowering himself slowly onto one of the high-backed velvet stools at the island. "You take better care of my chest than my physicians do, Clara." "They look at charts, sir. I look at you." It is a small exchange, ordinary and fleeting, yet it hangs in the air with a warmth that the rest of the cold, cavernous penthouse perpetually lacks. The shift comes on a Tuesday evening, wrapped in the smooth, deceptive packaging of a charity gala. Elena has spent 3 hours transforming herself into high society's darling, draped in emeralds that glitter like frozen poison against a backless velvet gown. Gregory, the young, impossibly handsome junior partner of Vance Enterprises' legal division, and Elena's fiercely kept cousin, when polite company is listening, stands by the French doors, nursing a scotch and laughing at something Elena whispers into his ear. Julian sits in his high-backed leather wingback, dressed in a sharp tuxedo that feels more like a costume than clothing. His breathing is slightly shallow tonight. "We're leaving early, Julian," Elena says, gliding over, her fingers resting lightly on his rigid shoulder. The scent of her expensive tuberose perfume washes over him, heavy and cloying. "Gregory is driving us down. The drive will do you good." "I'm quite comfortable here, Elena," Julian replies, his eyes fixed on the television screen playing a silent news ticker. "Nonsense. The board members will be thrilled to see you making an appearance. Won't they, Gregory?" Gregory steps forward, flashing a brilliant, white-toothed smile that doesn't quite reach his calculating eyes. "Absolutely, Julian. The firm isn't the same without your shadow looming over the boardroom. Let me help you up." As Gregory reaches down, his grip on Julian's elbow is a fraction too tight, a brief, sharp twist of fingers in a frail flesh designed to inflict hidden pain. Julian doesn't flinch, but a muscle in his jaw ticks. "I'll handle Mr. Vance's coat," a quiet voice intervenes. Clara steps out from the butler's pantry, holding Julian's heavy wool overcoat over her arm. Her expression is entirely neutral, her gaze cast down respectfully, but as she passes Gregory, her shoulder brushes his arm with surgical precision. Later, long after the heavy oak doors have clicked shut and the penthouse descends into an echoing silence, Clara returns to the study to clear away the stray glasses. On the mahogany desk, half hidden beneath a stack of architectural blueprints, lies a forgotten leather portfolio. Clara reaches out to straighten it, but the flap falls open. Inside are documents printed on heavy legal stationery. Power of attorney, full asset assignment, bearing Julian's signature, or a chillingly precise forgery of it, along with international wire transfer instructions routed through a Cayman Islands shell corporation. And beneath the papers, a printed text conversation between Elena and Gregory, glowing on the face of a discarded burner phone left charging behind the desk lamp. Once the signature is notarized tomorrow, we liquidate the Zurich accounts. G. And the old man? A quiet stroke at his age is entirely believable. The doctors won't look twice. Clara's fingers freeze against the cold leather. The quiet world of the Vance estate suddenly tilts into a terrifying abyss. The air in the penthouse grows thick with unspoken war over the next 48 hours. Clara keeps her head down, moving like a ghost through the corridors, but her eyes miss nothing. She notes how Elena's demeanor shifts from casual dismissal to sharp, viper-like observation whenever Clara enters the room. She hears the whispered, urgent phone calls Elena takes on the terrace, and she watches Gregory linger by the safe behind the study painting, his eyes darting toward the combination lock whenever he thinks no one is watching. The first psychological fracture occurs on Thursday afternoon. Julian is sitting in the winter garden, a glass of water untouched on the iron table beside him. Clara brings out a fresh linen lap blanket, spreading it gently over his knees. "They're moving quickly, Clara," Julian says softly, not looking up from the garden roses. His voice is flat, devoid of self-pity, charged instead with a quiet, devastating grief. "I built this company from a single truck in the winter of 1965. I built a life, and in my twilight, I chose beauty over wisdom. I thought youth could warm an old man's bones. I didn't realize it was just waiting for the fire to go out." "You're not gone yet, Mr. Vance," Clara says, her hands resting on the back of his wheelchair. "They have the duplicate key to the safety deposit box," Julian whispers, turning his pale eyes up to hers. "They think I don't know. They poisoned my evening tea yesterday with a heavy sedative. I poured it into the potted fern when they weren't looking. But how long can an old man play a game of chess against two people who hold all the pieces? Long enough to change the board, Clara replies. Before Julian can answer, the glass door slides open with a sharp clatter. Elena stands there, her face a mask of sweet, chilling concern. Clara, Elena purrs, stepping out onto the stone patio, her eyes narrowing as she looks between the two of them. You've been spending an awful lot of time hovering around my husband lately. Are you a nurse now? Or are you just losing track of your dusting duties? I was just ensuring Mr. Vance was comfortable, Mrs. Vance, Clara says, her voice remaining perfectly even, though her heart is hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird.
Comfortable, Elena repeats, stepping closer.
The scent of tuberose is suffocating. She reaches down, her manicured nails hooking into the edge of Julian's blanket, yanking it slightly. Julian doesn't need coddling. He needs rest. Go back to the kitchen, Clara. Now. Clara holds Elena's gaze for one long, breathless second, a silent clash of two entirely different worlds colliding in the sunlight, before she dips her head and turns away. Saturday night brings the storm. Not of rain, but of final execution. Elena and Gregory have invited a small group of high-profile associates over for an intimate late-night supper, a carefully staged alibi to establish witnesses while the final digital asset transfers clear at midnight. In the kitchen, Clara stands alone under the harsh fluorescent lights, scrubbing a copper pan that is already spotless. Her hands are shaking. Upstairs, through the ceiling vents, she can hear the low murmur of laughter, the clinking of crystal flutes, and Gregory's rich, confident voice holding court. Julian has been isolated in the study under the guise of feeling unwell. In reality, Elena has locked him in, taking the heavy brass key with her. Clara sneaks down the service hallway, clutching a heavy iron master ring she took from the housekeeping office. Her breath catches in her throat as she reaches the study door. She slips the key into the lock. It turns with a dry, metallic click. She pushes the door open. Julian is slumped over the mahogany desk, his head resting against his arms, his breathing shallow and rattling. Mr. Vance, Clara whispers, rushing to his side, shaking his shoulder gently. Sir, you have to wake up. They've drugged the water pitcher on your desk. You can't drink from it. Julian stirs slowly, lifting his head. His skin is pale, almost translucent, and his eyes are clouded with exhaustion. Clara, they found out I moved the contingency portfolio to a secure trust this morning. Gregory was in the safe. They know. Suddenly, the study door swings wide open. Elena stands in the doorway, her emerald earrings catching the light, her face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated venom. Behind her looms Gregory, his sleeves rolled up, a cold, predatory smile playing on his lips. Well, Elena says, stepping into the room, her voice dripping with venomous amusement. The loyal little maid playing detective. How utterly pathetic. Clara instantly steps in front of Julian's desk, spreading her arms slightly to shield him. You can't do this. The authorities will find two people who tragically succumbed to a heart condition after a stressful evening. Gregory interrupts, stepping forward. His frame is broad and menacing, towering over Clara. He reaches out with a heavy hand, grabbing Clara by the shoulder and shoving her violently to the side. Clara hits the edge of the mahogany bookshelf, her breath exploding from her lungs in a sharp gasp as heavy volumes tumble down around her. Julian tries to stand, gripping the edge of the desk, but Gregory slams his hand down onto the wood, pushing the old man back into his chair with casual cruelty. Sit down, old man, Gregory sneers. Your time is up. Elena walks over to the desk, picking up the legal document with a triumphant laugh. Sign it, Julian, or watch your little friend here lose her livelihood, and perhaps find herself facing some very serious charges of theft from the estate. Who do you think the police will believe? A billionaire's grieving wife, or a domestic worker with no family to miss her? Clara pushes herself up from the floor, her shoulder burning with a dull, throbbing ache. She looks at Julian. The old man's eyes are closed, his shoulders sagging under the crushing weight of utter defeat. The hope is gone. The trap has snapped shut. For 3 seconds, The room is entirely dead. Gregory raises a gold-plated Mont Blanc pen, forcing it into Julian's trembling, limp fingers, guiding his hand toward the signature line. Elena watches with bated breath, a triumphant smile spreading across her painted lips. Clara looks down at the floor among the scattered books. Her fingers brush against something cold and metallic. The heavy brass paperweight shaped like a vintage locomotive, an old gift Julian had kept on his desk for decades. Her mind doesn't race. It clears with terrifying, absolute focus. She doesn't attack Gregory. She doesn't scream for help. Instead, with a sudden, deliberate movement, Clara reaches behind her to the mahogany side table where Elena's discarded smartphone lies connected to the Bluetooth sound system of the penthouse. With a single tap of her thumb, Clara hits record and then play. Instantly, the high-end architectural speakers hidden in the corners of the study blast a crystal-clear audio recording at maximum volume. Once the signature is notarized tomorrow, we liquidate the Zurich accounts. G. And the old man? A quiet stroke at his age is entirely believable. The doctors won't look twice. The voices echo off the high ceilings, bouncing off the glass windows, ringing through the open doorway down the hallway where the dinner guests are still mingling. Gregory freezes mid-motion. The pen slips from his fingers, clattering against the desk. Elena spins around, her face draining of all color, her eyes wide with sudden, unadulterated panic. "Turn that off! Turn that off right now!" she shrieks, lunging toward the console. But it is too late. From the hallway, the sound of murmuring voices halts instantly. Heavy footsteps approach the study door. The study doorway fills with figures. 3 senior board members of Vance Enterprises, along with 2 corporate attorneys who have been invited to the evening supper under the guise of celebration, stand frozen on the threshold, their expressions shifting from polite curiosity to absolute horror. Gregory steps back, his hands raised instinctively, stammering, "It's a setup. It's AI-generated nonsense, a prank." "Is it a prank, Gregory?" The voice comes from the desk. It is not weak. It is not the rattling rasp of a dying man. Julian Vance stands up. He pushes himself away from the mahogany chair, leaning only lightly on his cane, his spine straightening with decades of hard-earned authority. His pale slate eyes, cold and sharp as winter ice, lock onto Gregory and Elena with a terrifying intensity that commands total silence. "You underestimated the loyalty of the person who actually cleans this house," Julian says, his voice ringing through the quiet room with absolute clarity. "You thought because she wore an apron, she was invisible. You thought because I grew old, I grew blind." Elena's knees buckle slightly. She clutches at the edge of the desk, her manicured fingers trembling violently. "Julian, please. He manipulated me. Gregory threatened me." "Save your breath for the investigators, Elena." Julian cuts her off, his voice like the crack of splitting timber. He turns his gaze to the senior board members standing at the door. "Gentlemen, please call the Chicago Police Department and notify the federal prosecutor handling corporate fraud. We have guests who need to be escorted out." Gregory makes a sudden, desperate lunge toward the door, trying to push past the attorneys, but one of the board members, a burly former linebacker turned executive, steps forward and grabs Gregory by the collar, slamming him against the wood paneling with a heavy thud. As the chaos of security and emergency services begins to flood the penthouse, the room slowly empties. The flashing red and blue lights of police cruisers begin to paint the high windows in long, silent streaks of crimson and indigo. An hour later, the penthouse is quiet again. The guests are gone. The police have taken their statements, and the heavy oak doors are finally shut against the noise of the city. In the vast, softly lit kitchen, the air smells faintly of cardamom and Earl Grey tea. Julian sits on the high-backed velvet stool. The tension in his shoulders has vanished, replaced by a profound, heavy fatigue, but his eyes are steady and warm. Clara stands by the counter, quietly wiping down the marble surface with a clean cloth, her movements measured and serene. Julian reaches out, sliding a small, heavy envelope across the polished stone toward her. "What is this, Mr. Vance?" Clara asks softly, pausing her hand. "It is a transfer of title," Julian says, his voice gentle. "The carriage house on the estate grounds. It has been legally deeded in your name as of 20 minutes ago, and a stipend that ensures you will never have to scrub another floor or serve another ungrateful soul as long as you live." Clara looks down at the envelope, then slowly looks up at him. Her eyes are unreadable for a long moment, glistening with a quiet, hard-earned dignity. She doesn't touch the envelope immediately. "I didn't do it for a house, Mr. Vance," Clara says quietly. "I know you didn't, Clara," Julian replies, offering a small, genuine smile that softens the weathered lines of his face. "You did it for justice, and perhaps because we both deserve a home that isn't built on deceit." Julian reaches out, his frail hand resting flat on the cool marble counter, just inches from hers. Clara doesn't pull away. After a brief, suspended moment, she lets her hand slide forward until her knuckles lightly brush his. It is not a gesture of passion, but of deep, resonant survival. Two souls who weathered the storm, anchored by an unspoken understanding that transcends wealth, status, and time. Outside the towering windows, the Chicago skyline burns against the night, indifferent and eternal, while inside, the quiet warmth of an unshakable bond fills the room, lingering long after the last shadows fade.